Hello, guys. We are back, and we're gonna be continuing from where we left off. We are so close to finishing this book. This will be a 30-minute episode. So, let's dive right in. Chapter 34. Panic shot through Clay, and he sped up, flapping his wings frantically. Glory soared up beside him. "Stop," she whispered. "If we run, they'll know there's something wrong." Clay knew she was right, but it was almost impossibly hard to swing around and fly back toward the Mudwing village and the voice that had called after them. 5 dragons were hovering in the sky, watching them intently as they drew close to each other. Clay realized that they were dragonettes, not full grown though. The biggest one was a bit smaller than Clay, with warm golden ember eyes and a recent claw mark wound on his tail. The smallest was the dragon with the patch on his nose, who had stared at Clay in the village. "Hey," Clay said to them. We hoped he sounded casual, not and non-threatening. "We were just leaving." The Mudwing dragonets glanced at each other. "The biggest," one said. "We heard you were asking about a blood egg from one of Tully's hatchings." "That's right," Glory said. "Do you know what happened to it?" The smallest Mudwing blurted. "Did it hatch? Who came out? Where's the dragonet?" Glory poked Clay with her tail before he could respond. "Who's asking?" she said. "I'm Reed, the biggest dragonet. This is Soar, Pleasant, Marsh, and Ember, the smallest one." Ember had his eyes fixed on Clay again. The other three kept checking the sky with nervous expressions. "I am Clay, and this is Glory," Clay answered. Pheasant tilted her head at Glory. "That's not a normal Mudwing name," she said. "Oops," Clay thought. "I didn't choose it," Glory said with a shrug that lifted her up and down in the air currents. "What if you hatch from a blood egg?" asked Reed. "Are you missing the sib?" "Sib," Clay said suddenly. "Siblings. That's what everyone keeps talking about." He launched himself forward and gripped Reed's front talons. "Is that what you mean? We're, we're, were we in the same hatching?" "I knew it," Ember yelped. "I knew I had a familiar feeling. I told you." He bundled into Marsh and nearly knocked them both out of the air. "You're our brother," Reed said with a grin, and warmed Clay to the tips of his claws. You should have been with us all along." "He's not just our brother," Tristan pointed out. "Look at him. He should be our big wings." The grin faded from Reed's face as he studied Clay from wingtips to talons. "That's true," he said. Clay wanted to bring that grin back. He didn't understand what was wrong. He pointed to a clear island in the marshes below. "Let's talk," he said. His brothers and sister couldn't believe how little he knew about woodwing life, but they knew they were happy to explain it all to him, their words tumbling over one another. The 5 of them coiled together naturally in the tall grass, tails, tails and talons and wings entwined, with umber climbing up their backs and standing on heads to make themselves heard. They told him that Mudwing dragons had laid their eggs in 4 mud nests protected by walls of hot rocks. They were so safe that Mother never needed to check on them, and the dragonets were usually born when she wasn't even there. The firstborn was always the biggest, and his or her first task was to help the other dragonets out of their eggs by cracking their shells from the outside. As they came to its part of the explanation, Glory gasped. She turned around to Claire. That's what it was, she said. When we hatched, the Guardians didn't know anything about mudwings, so they thought you were attacking us, but you were trying to help. Your instinct told you to get out of the rest of us out of our shells. Clay, you knew what this means. You weren't trying to kill us at all. Clay felt like he was filling up with warm summer clouds. Kestrel was wrong, all wrong about him, and she always had been. His strength wasn't for killing and violence, it was for protecting his brothers and sisters. He wasn't destined to be a monster. He wasn't a killer deep inside somewhere. He was a big wings. He crossed his tail over Glory's and smiled at her too, happy to speak. So from then on, the big wings takes care of all of the others, Pheasant said, nudging Reed with affection. Some of them can be pretty bossy or too weak, but we got a good one. She stopped, realizing what she said. I mean, you would have been good too, I'm sure. Reed tugged up a clump of marsh grass and started shredding it without looking at Clay. And then we all stick together, he said, for always. We learn to hunt and survive together. We grow up together and we live together for the rest of our lives. And when we're at war, we all fight as a group. Every mudwing troop is a hatching of siblings, except for the ones that have lost too many. And then they try to find unsibs to form a new troop with. Pheasant glanced around at the others. Wriggling Umber, silent, sore, nervous, twitching Marsh, as if she would rather die than replace them with unsibs who weren't her own brothers and sisters. How many have you lost, Clay asked. 2, said Reed. You and your sister Crane, 2 days ago, in the battle by the cliff. He nodded in the direction of the waterfall. Clayson's sides twisted as he realized one of the dead bodies he'd flown over had been his own sister. That was our first battle, Sora said softly. It was awful, Umber added. Reed sighed heavily. I was not the big wings I wanted to be. You were, the others all protested at once. You were amazing, Reed, Pheasant said firmly. We'd all be dead if it weren't for you, Marsh agreed. They all had the same expression as they looked at Reed. Clay could see it was trust, faith that their big wings would take care of them no matter what happened. But it's all right now, Reed said, because you're back and you should be our big wings. He glanced sidelong at Clay, and in his umber eyes, Clay could see all the worries he'd ever felt himself, all the fears for his friends, all the things he'd done and would do to protect them, all the fiercity of how much he cared about them. Clay cared about his real brothers and sisters too, although he'd only just met them. He felt instinctively like they were extensions of his own claws and wings. It was the family he'd always wanted. As if he stayed, it would tear them apart. He could see in their eyes they wanted him and were afraid of him at the same time. If he became their big wings. That would happen to the loyalty of Reed. What would happen to Reed himself, forced to follow him but desperate to protect them his own way? We are almost done with this chapter. We're gonna complete the whole entire book today, I think. Clay didn't know anything about mudwing life, or troop formations, or even how to hunt in a swamp. How could he lead them into battle? It would never be like the closeness they'd have with Reed, no matter how hard they all tried. There was only one way to protect his siblings. He realized if he was really their big wings, he had to leave them and leave Reed as their big wings. The way he'd always been. He would keep them safe better than Clay ever could, and their sibs would not be forced to choose between them. Glory was looking at him too. I shook his head. No, he said to his brothers and sisters, Reed is your big wings. You trust him and need him. I can replace him even if I try. His brothers raised his head, pride wearing with disbelief on his face. The other Dragonites looked relieved and sad at the same time. Besides, Glory said, he can't save you. He's our big wings. She brushed Clay's wings with hers. He was glad he couldn't change colors like her, or he felt like he might have turned crimson from nose to tail. Are you sure? Reed said to Clay. You can still join us, big wings or not. There's more fighting ahead. We could use another strong dragon on our side. Clay was tempted. He wanted to know his brothers and sisters, and it would be so easy to slip into his life and become a warrior with no prophecies to worry about and no angry salmon queens hunting him. But he remembered the charred corpse on the battlefield, and he thought about his friends and how they tried to go on without him. I'm afraid I have a destiny, he said ruefully. We're going to try to stop the war. Umber's eyes went wide. Like the prophecy, he breathed. That's you? Pheasant looked at Glory doubtfully. That's us, Clay said, touching Glory's talons. Apparently, Glory had, more or less. We'll try anyway, Clay said. But maybe after that, once the war is over, maybe I could come back. You're one of us, Reed said. You can come back any time. I hope you do, Umber said. The others nodded. Clay looked from face to face, wondering how many of his brothers and sisters would survive the next battle. He wondered if he could stop the war in time to save them all. Let's see how much pages we have of the new chapter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's it. 1, 2. Yep, then we move on to epilogue. Tsunami and Sunny did not seem at all surprised to hear the explanation of Clay's attack on their eggs. Of course, Tsunami said. She had hunted while they were gone, and she nudged a dead wild duck in Clay's direction. I never thought you were trying to kill us, as if you would ever, Sunny agreed. Well, I didn't know that, Clay said. They had found a small groove at the top of the cliff, far enough away from the waterfall and the battlefield that they couldn't smell the burning dragons anymore. He dug his claws into the duck, suddenly famished. So what now, Big Wings Lord asked, clawing up a pheasant for herself. I'm never going to get tired of calling you that. We'll be like mudwings, Clay said proudly. We will stick together no matter what happens. We're a team. And we look after one another, which means the first thing we have to do is find Starflight. The Nightwings can't just take him away. He's one of us. And we'll search the whole world until we find him. It's time for us to get our friends back. He stopped as a heavy thump shook the ground, and wings flapped to stop till he stopped behind him. The others were staring over his shoulder. I better not be who I think it is, said Clay. Found him, Glory said briefly. Glory turned around. Starflight stood blinking in the waving grass. Just outside the trees. The sunlight picked up glints of purple and deep blue in his black scales. Up in the sky, and the black bulk of Marcy was winging away. Oh, bye, Tsunami shouted after him. Thanks for everything. You've been so helpful. Sunny flung herself at Starflight with a cry of joy. You found us, she said, batted his wings with hers. I hoped you would. He returned her hug, smiling shyly at her. Hello, Clay said to Starflight. You couldn't have waited until after my normal speech, maybe a day or two, so we could at least pretend to look for you. Marcia saw you flying up from the marshes, Starflight said. He said to tell you some other dragon could have spotted you too, and we should be more careful. Well, great, Tsunami said. That's such a useful advice. Glad he's so concerned now that we've managed to say our own selves about 100 times and everything. Any other survival tips or prophecy-filling suggestions? Starflight ducked his head, looking uncomfortable. I'm sorry he took me, he said. I wanted him to bring me back right away, but he wouldn't. He said they couldn't afford to lose any Nightwings. Even he swallowed even particular little ones. What the heck does that mean? They said. You're not peculiar, Sunny said. I'm the one that's peculiar and little. Well, he is by a bit, Gloria said. But we don't mind. Tsunami looked thoughtful. Couldn't afford to lose any Nightwings, she echoed. Is there something wrong with them? Did you notice? No, Starflight glanced up at the sky. He didn't take me to the secret Nightwing Kingdom, if that's what you're wondering. I didn't even get to meet any of the dragons he brought with him. He just stayed up in the mountain peaks, waiting. I guess he wanted to see what would happen to you guys. Not that he was going to do anything about it, Glory muttered. So he doesn't care what we do next? Clay asked. He's not making us go back to the Talents of Peace? I'm not sure he's really happy with the Talents of Peace right now, Starflight said. Then we can do whatever we want, Clay said. I say we visit Sonora's mother, who, by the way, he said to Glory, it is the Queen of the Sea Wings, according to Kestrel. Seriously? Starflight said, staring at Tsunami like in the scroll. Cora's supposed to be a great queen, not crazy like Scarlet. Tsunami looked uncharacteristically nervous. Do you think she'll be happy to meet me? What if she's like Clay's mother? No offense, Clay. I know she'll be happy to see you, Starflight said. Don't you remember what it said in the royal lineage of the Sea Wings? From the Scorching to the present, all four dragons groaned. Remind me why we want him back, Glory asked Clay. This is important and fascinating, Starflight said, stomping his feet. Listen, Queen Coral doesn't have an hair. Not a single one of her female dragonets has lived to adulthood. Rumor has it there's a curse on her hatchlings. That's why she'd be glad to meet Tsunami. Gordo lost hair to the sea, to the kingdom of the sea. Tsunami puffed out her chest. Me, really? Oh my gosh, Tsunami! You could be queen of the sea wings one day. Sunny cried. Tsunami grinned. Wouldn't that be great? I've always thought I'd be a good queen. Boy, I don't know, Gloria said. I mean, if you want to be queen one day, you'll have to be bossy, full control of yourself. Oh wait, Snowy whacked her lightly with her tail. Behave or I'll have you beheaded, she said, lifting her snout. So let's go find the sea wings, Clay said. They're not on Burnside, are they? Starflight heaved one of his long-suffering sighs. No, Clay, that was Blister, the middle sister, of whom the scrolls say. Glory, Tsunami, and Clay all tackled him at once. Tsunami tried to come to his rescue, and the five of them ended up scuffling in the grass, laughing. Clay caught a glimpse of the sky, blue and gold and empty of dragons for now. He still didn't know how they would fulfill the prophecy and end the war. He didn't know how the other dragonets' families would react to them. He knew Burn was hunting them, and probably other dangerous dragons soon would be as well. But he knew that he was here to do what he was here to do, and that was protect his friends, no matter what. He'd known it from hatching, even if he hadn't understood it. He didn't have to worry about finding this monster or being something he wasn't anymore. He would have to be enough for the prophecy, just the way he was. Big, heroic destiny, he thought. Here I come. We made it to the epilogue. See how much pages we have of the epilogue. 1, 2, and 3. Are you ready for this? We're about to read the epilogue. Wind howled around the small rocky island with the force of 1,000 screaming dragons. It battered at the three on the cliff as if trying to tear off their wings. One dragon was black as night, one red as flames, and one as pale as desert sand. Why'd you bring me here? Kestrel shouted, digging her claws into gaps in the rock. The wind seized her voice and threw it away. Marcy ignored her. He stepped closer to the sandwing, their heads sheltered by their wings so they could hear each other. Trust me, you're the one, he said. Burn and Blaze are the two who will die. We have chosen you to be the Sandwing King. Surf roared at the base of the cliff below them. Buster regarded him with glittering black eyes. She was smaller than Burn, with a long, cunning face and a black diamond pattern running down her spine. She had an eerie stillness about her, like a venomous snake about to strike. Unlike her sisters, she had no scars. She was much too clever to do anything of fighting herself. And the dragonets will make this happen, she said. The same dragonets who are now wandering loose around the countryside. We'll keep an eye on them, Marcia promised. It's better this way. Once the word gets out, everyone will be watching for them, waiting for the prophecy to come true at last. What if they have their own ideas about who should be queen? Blister asked. They won't besides. Marcyr spread his wings so the scales caught the moonlight. The Nightwing Dragonet has his orders now. He knows what he's supposed to do. What? Kestrel yelled. What are you saying? She tried to crowd in closer, but the other two dragons spoke as if she wasn't there. I like that, Blister mused. A traitor in the mist. Tear them apart from the inside. My kind of plan. We're good at those. Marcyr said. A blast of wind buffed the sea against the rocks and yanked at the dragon's tails. Thunder rumbled behind the thick clouds in the distance. But we won't expect what we promised. That won't be a problem, she said, running her forked tongue over her teeth. Tell me, does your magic vision tell you where the dragonets will go to next? Marcyr looked at her sorely. That's not how it works, he said. Blister looked amused. It's to be. Let's hope it's the ceilings then, she said. And her? This is the trouble. She tossed her head at Kestrel. Kestrel caught the last question. Yes, she roared. Why am I here? Marcyr, you said the dragonets were in danger, and you came running, he said. Well, of course they're in danger. More than they know, but you're really here because you failed me. Kestrel blinked her orange-yellow eyes and took a step back, glaring at him. I failed you? She growled. I work for the Towns of Peace, not the Nightwings. They can talk to me if they've got complaints. I kept those brats alive, like I was supposed to. But they don't need you anymore, Marcyr said. Neither do we. Blister's claws ripped across Kestrel's throat before she could scream. Kestrel clutched at the blood pouring from her neck and staggered back, plummeted by the wind. Plummeted by the wind. Blister took another step and stabbed Kestrel in the heart with her poisonous tail. The skywing collapsed to the rocks, thrashing in agony. Her mouth opened to scream curses or breathe fire at her murderers, but only dark red blood bubbled out. Marcyr glanced down at her, then reached out with one talon and nudged her body over the edge of the cliff. The wind caught her splayed wings and tossed her against the rocks until she got bored and dropped her in the ocean. The sound of the splash didn't carry to the top of the cliff, where the other two dragons continued as if nothing had happened. There's one more, Marcyr said. A seeming named Webs. If he made it out of the mountain, he'll be looking for them too. We need him dead before the rest of the plan will work. Not a problem, Blister said again. She stared out at the pounding sea below them. What's one more dead dragon here? Or they're on my way to the throne, Marcyr smiled. Then we will understand each other. Give me the dragonets, she said, and we'll both get everything we want. That is everything in the book. We just finished book 1. Can you believe that? Bye bye, Johnny out.